What is up, YouTube? This is Oddjob Entertainment bringing you my thoughts on the recent Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War beta. Unfortunately, as the title indicates, I was not very impressed. And so far to me, the Cold War game looks kind of disappointing. And I've got a few points that I want to run through. Obviously, the gameplay in the background is Modern Warfare, which I think is a superior game, and I'll go over why right now. First on my list of items here, and I know it's kind of a controversial idea, is mounting. So mounting was introduced in Modern Warfare. It is not going to be present in the Cold War game, and I think that is a large step back. Now I know that it does, in its current iteration, really encourage camping, which is really annoying, and you're going to see at the beginning of this clip here. Of course, just like everybody else, I run right up onto that wall and get a few long shots that way with the AS Val. Now, mounting itself is not the issue. I think it mostly comes down to map design. But what I think mounting does provide is another gameplay element that, if you're trying to be smart and trying to take advantage of your environment, it gives you another tool at your disposal to make sure that you're the one that wins the gunfight compared to your opponent. So in that regard, the one that plans the best has the best chance of winning the gunfight. And the fact that it's no longer present in Cold War does kind of bother me. You see I got a quick little headshot there peeking around the corner. It kind of reduces the realism because I mean, these guns are heavy, and that's why mounting was introduced. It's a way to leverage the environment to take better advantage and reduce your recoil. The fact that it's no longer going to be in Cold War means that there's no opportunity to do that, which means that you can't do that kind of planning ahead of time to try and win these gunfights. So I think that that's a big step backwards. I think that really the issues that people have with mounting is just an issue of map design, and I think with slightly tweaked map priorities, you could easily make mounting a valuable and not nearly as annoying element of gameplay. Next on the list of items for me is doors. So Modern Warfare introduced a new system of door mechanics where you can either smash through the door, which is what most people are doing most of the time, just sprinting head first into these doors, doing a face plant and smacking the door open and trying to surprise the enemy inside. That's all well and dandy, but it also gives you the opportunity, if you take your time, to peek through a door. By basically you crouch, aim down sight, and poke through the door slowly, and you can peek through it. And basically it's just another mechanic where they stripped it out of Cold War and it's not going to be present. And I think that that's another step back. And doors were not very often used to their fullest tactical advantage in every match, but it was another mechanic where if you wanted to set yourself up for a gunfight, you could do so. Maybe that means closing the door behind you so that you would at least get a little bit of a warning before someone rounds the corner to kill you. So the fact that it's not present is, again, a disappointment in my eyes. Third in my list is tactical sprint. And this was the function introduced in Modern Warfare where if you double tap the sprint button, that's how I think most people had it set, but you could do other keybinds. If you double tap the sprint button, you would enter basically like a faster running mode for your character for a short duration. Oops, got a teammate killed there. Sorry. And this was a good way to basically get yourself behind cover very quickly. If you're being shot at, you could maybe try and round that corner and get into cover so that you could try and re-engage from another angle. It's no longer present in Cold War. It's another feature that was cut. And again, I feel like that's a step back. In this case, almost in a very literal sense, because you can't take those steps a little faster. I don't think that it was a huge mechanic. I don't think that it would have cost a lot to try and just implement it. And there's a lot of things that they did carry over from Modern Warfare. I feel like this should have been one of the features that they did keep. So again, the fact that it's not included is disappointing to me. Another item on my list is something about the color feels off in Cold War, and it's really hard for me to kind of pin down what it is that I'm feeling. with this, but if you look on screen right now, we've got obviously Modern Warfare playing in the background, and you can tell that the sunlight is very harsh and bright, but that makes sense for the environment that we're in, and it should be harsh and bright. And I think I noticed this more with that map Satellite in the Cold War beta. It's the one where you've got a lot of iron-rich rock formations and a crashed satellite in the middle of the map. Something feels off about their lighting. It feels a little too vibrant and oversaturated, and I think that kind of makes the game overall feel a little more cartoonish and loses some of the realism that I was enjoying from the color choices in Modern Warfare. Now, I can hear some of you in the comments typing, oh my gosh, complaining about realism in a Call of Duty game. Like, no one's going to be calling VTOL jets all the time in war. And that's true, but the realism also contributes to how you feel immersed in the game. If it's something that is trying to strike that realistic boundary, when something looks off, it feels really off. And so when I was playing Cold War, the colors seemed off, and it was kind of taking me out. So I feel like that wouldn't be too hard of a fix. It's mostly just adjusting color values, which is fairly easy to do. And you know, there's actually a lot of third-party plugins that I imagine a lot of people will be using just to adjust their color a little bit. So that's my thoughts on the color. I also want to talk briefly about sound design. This has been touched on in various aspects by other people. Obviously, towards the beginning of the life cycle of Modern Warfare, sound design was something that was complained about a lot, since enemy footsteps were so loud you could basically just echolocate wherever the enemies are all the time, even without a headset. I feel like it's in a pretty good spot right now. Oh man, look at that guy just doing a team kill on me because I was standing in the doorway. What a jerk. Anyways, coming back to sound design, they eventually fixed the footsteps, and I feel like it's in a pretty good spot. It could be a little better, you know, just to make it perfect, but you know, I feel like it's pretty good. I really dislike the sound design that is present in Cold War. It is markedly better compared to the alpha, but we're at the point where, you know, we're looking at the beta. This is essentially the game as it's going to be released. There's not going to be too many changes between now and the full release, and major changes to things like sound design aren't going to happen once the full release happens. So the fact that it sounds like you're running around with rubber galoshes all the time is honestly a little ridiculous in my eyes. It's not that, I mean, sure, soldiers are generally wearing boots, but the boots that they have emulated in Cold War, it sounds like you're running with hollow rubber rain boots all the time. You just this constant thud, 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 thud as you're listening to your own steps and those of your opponents. That just seems kind of lazy in my mind. It just doesn't sound right. Also, there's been complaints about the gun sound overall, and that's one thing that Modern Warfare does very well, is the gun sound. Everything sounds meaty, chunky, and, you know, kind of gritty. It sounds very aggressive. When you step into Cold War, obviously it was much worse in the alpha, but all it seems like they really did between the alpha and the beta is just increase the base levels. And while it does help to a great degree, it also sounds kind of lazy. Like, there was more work that should have been done in the sound design department to make it so that it wasn't just such a big step back from what Modern Warfare had achieved in that regard. So the sound design, in my mind, big letdown. Not a fan. Last but certainly not least for me is the iron sights. Well, basically all the sights in the Cold War beta. All of the iron sights I felt like were pretty much garbage and almost unusable. I honestly didn't play the beta that much, but the guns that I did use were the M4, the M16, and the Krig, I think is what they call it. Anyways, the M4 has giant blocks of steel on either side of the sight, so you already have a pretty limited sight window just due to the nature that it is an iron sight. And then they put these giant blocks on either side. It just makes the sight itself look ridiculous, honestly. I couldn't find any way to very enjoyably use the iron sight. So as soon as I got the red dot, threw that on the gun and figured, okay, well, this will be better. Unfortunately, it's not. They managed to make the red dot sights almost as useless as their iron sights, and that really bothers me. And I'm going to be putting some images up on screen right about now that will be showing the AK-47 in Modern Warfare with the Viper reflex sight compared to the quick dot LED AK-47 in Cold War. These are essentially the same sight. I know that there is a Cobra red dot sight, and that's technically more accurate to be comparing against, but they're essentially the same sight, just different technologies implied by their naming schemes. And if you look at the sight ring that surrounds the aperture in the Cold War beta picture, you'll see that the ring itself is quite a bit thicker than it is in Modern Warfare. The sight feels farther away from the viewer, and that means that the aperture that you are looking through is smaller on your screen. So all of this combines to provide a very narrow field of view when looking through not the iron sight. When looking through the red dot, you get a very narrow field of view with very thick rings. It was very difficult to actually be able to track a target when looking through these sights. Even like in the gameplay on screen right now, I was using the holographic sight, and that was significantly easier to use compared to any of the sights in the Black Ops beta, simply because the rings were too thick. It felt like you were playing with a toy that, you know, like those Nerf sights that were just really thick rings. So I do not like that at all. A little mini rant aside from, you know, the main points that I've argued. In games they add this ADS delay when you're using a red dot sight, and that's not accurate to what it's supposed to be in real life. Generally speaking, iron sights are the slowest form of aiming down a weapon, and red dots are supposed to improve your speed by basically giving you an idea as to what you're aiming at before you even fully center your face on the cheek riser. So that's just a mini rant, but I understand why they do it. It's just to balance out game mechanics. I think it's dumb. Balance it some other way. But back to the subject matter at hand. I really don't like their iron sights, and their red dot sights aren't much better. So yeah, I don't like any of it. Oh boy, I thought I was done ranting about the iron sights and the red dots, but then I was watching this back again and I realized there was another detail that I wanted to touch on that I missed in the first take, and that is the MOA, or minutes of angle, about the dots themselves. If you look at granted it's a green dot, but you see the same effect with all the red dots in Modern Warfare. It's a very small MOA dot compared to what you're getting in Cold War. Cold War, it feels like you're getting like a 10 MOA dot. It's just ginormous. What that means is that it's not a very accurate thing to be using as a reticle. It covers a lot of your screen. It covers a lot of your target. In the real world, you know, you'd be paying quite a bit of money for these sights. So something that would be this big when you're looking through it, you're talking about like a $50 sight that you get for like an airsoft gun. Whereas the Modern Warfare sight feels much more like a competent Trigicon that you might be paying a lot of money for. The fact that the dot is so big makes longer distance engagements tougher. Since the sight covers up all of the useful information that you want in a CQB environment, it makes it kind of useless at all ranges. So props to them. They managed to make red dots, which are a great innovation for the modern shooter, practically useless in every scenario. So have to give them the award for that. I think now I have thoroughly ranted about how I hate these sites, so I think that I've beaten this horse to death. If you want to join in with me on hating on the sites, feel free to do so down in the comments. The game isn't going to be all bad. It does have a few redeeming qualities, and I wanted to touch a bit on those a little bit, just so that it doesn't seem like I'm just constantly harping on this game. One of the things that I really like is that they are really leaning hard into that 80s vibe. You can see it in all the promotional materials, as well as all the environments. It screams 1984. And that aspect to me is great. Love it. Can't get enough of it. Bring more to the table, right? I love all the music that they've been using for the promotional materials. We haven't heard a ton of music that they're going to be using in campaign sections and stuff like that, but I would hope that it kind of follows that soundtrack that they've used in their trailers so far. That would be awesome to me. Nothing better than blasting commies to 80s music in the background. Can't imagine a better ambiance for a game. So the fact that they're leaning hard into that, got to give them props where it's due. I like that. Obviously, it's going to be a fun game. It's going to sell millions of copies. Overall, it is fairly solid. I just feel like there are some major things that are holding it back that make it inferior to its predecessor. I would like to say that every time that you're getting a new Call of Duty, it should be an evolution and improvement upon what you experienced the year previous. The fact that they've taken so many of these innovations out of the game, to me, it screams of laziness, and it also just, it feels like such a step back. And I feel like Treyarch could have done some minor changes to make mounting a lot better, and they could have made the doors more immersive or better overall. Tactical sprint doesn't hurt anybody to have it, but it's great when you're trying to get behind cover. I don't know. Maybe it's just a combination of 2020. Maybe they were pressed for time. It could be any number of factors. But Cold War does not feel as complete a product to me as it should be, looking at how the beta is essentially the full game with bugs added. So the full game will be what you saw in the beta with hopefully fewer bugs. Anyways, this is Odd Job Entertainment signing off. Let me know down in the comments if you think that I'm a moron, or if you agree with me. Love to hear your thoughts. Anyways, see you on the battlefield.